I just got a text from a close friend. Her and her husband are both close friends of my family. So they're also neighbors. They live very close by. And I assume they're going to feel like I'm throwing them under the bus here, even though I'm not mentioning names. And the only one who's going to know who they are is me, possibly my wife. But I'm sure this is actually a betrayal of the friendship. So what's going on is they bought a rental property very close to their house, rented it to from as far as one can tell from what they described to this really sweet little old lady who may or may not had at least one, possibly two sons of hers living in the property as well. The problem is the sweet old lady passed away, and now it's just the two sons in the property. That as soon as mom passed away, they stopped paying rent, even though the one son seems to be getting some kind of income because he has potentially a disability, but they're not paying this money to the landlord. So our friends are basically going without rent. I counsel them to, first to get them onto a lease because we really can't evict. So there's a big difference between a squatter and an eviction. Someone is squatting an eviction. I mean, it's a huge money difference. I mean, it's going to cost you a fortune to get a squatter out, and it's going to take you forever to get a squatter out. Squatter rights are just incredible. If you have a lease, and if that lease has been validated with consideration, I'm not an attorney, I can't give legal advice, but if that lease is validated as a contract with some kind of consideration, if the tenants pay $1, with that lease, then it's a valid contract. So now you have a lease, and now you can actually handle it as an eviction, as they should have done. The problem is, and I get it, I totally get it. They basically are kind of going, into using just injecting hopium into their veins. They just want the least painful outcome that they can get, and that's what they're trying to grab at, and they just are never going to be able to grab it. And I was giving them advice out of the gate, telling them like, look, you're going to have to evict. They're obviously not willing to pay the rent. Even though it sounds like they might be capable of paying the rent, they still haven't paid you the rent. You need to get them on a lease, and they haven't done any of these steps. And again, I understand why. Not only do I understand they want the least painful thing, they don't want to have to pay an attorney for an eviction. They don't want to have to go without rent during the eviction process. They want to take this money now, and whatever they're hoping they can just get these tenants to magically start paying the rent. And I don't think they trust what's coming out of my mouth, because I just wonder if they just kind of hear me speak and they just think, I'm a property manager and I'm like, oh, you're never going to get money out of a bum. These guys haven't worked a day in their life and they're just not going to pay and you just need to get them out. No, and that's not where I'm coming from. That's not where a property management company or a property manager would really probably be coming from. So we operate from an investment perspective. We operate from massive, massive numbers. So whereas you might own a property, you might own 10 property, you might own 100 properties, a property management company is, exposed to a large number of properties. So we just have these statistics, we have these numbers, we have these metrics, and we know that 1 out of every 10, 1 out of every 100, 1 out of every 1,000 properties, or tenants, etc., will experience these things. So we just know as a fact, I just know the numbers that these tenants are never going to end up being viable tenants. You might get money out of them. I doubt it now, but you will have to evict them later. And the problem is they're actually started the process of getting them evicted, and then they kind of reversed it. They stopped the process. And I'm like, well, you now are resetting the clock, and you're just hemorrhaging money. And you really are hemorrhaging money. And they're probably not that far away from our medium rental price. So our medium rental price that my property management company, Grow Property Management, manages every day that the property is vacant. So when a tenant moves out, is costing that owner over $78, just over $78. So times $78 by 3 days, and that number starts getting to be a little bit more of a real number. Now actually times that $78 by 10 days, which a property can easily be vacant 10 days, given, a poor rental market or someone who's not marketing their property properly, but in their case, they're basically resetting it by months. So $78 a day times, how many extra months of resetting that clock. So my point being is it's very important, it's paramount to actually make intellectual, non-emotional decisions. Sometimes you have to make the painful decision of actually going and starting the eviction and just taking that route of an eviction, even though now you're not going to be going with rent, even though you're going to be paying a chunk of money to an attorney just to get the the tenants out so you can get a viable tenant in there and get it stabilized. That's the intellectual smart decision. That's the decision an investor would make. That's the decision a property manager is going to make for you. The emotional decision is the one that we're all going to make. Whereas in a property management company, we operate intellectually and we're just trained to do so. Whereas, and I think if I were just an individual landlord, I probably would be making emotional decisions of like, well, if the tenants just start paying rent tomorrow, then all this goes away, and maybe they'll just pay me all the past due rent that they owe me, and everything just gets to be 100%. This problem's just magically fixed. I get all the money they owe me. I'm going to get my rent going forward. Everything's going to be fine, and that's what we all hope. But that's just an emotional want. It's just not something that is likely to happen. And again, it's just not my like, you can't get money out of a bum, don't even try mindset. It's what I know owning a property management company. It's what I've seen. It's just, I've never seen it go elseways. And believe me, we actually have several processes actually through the eviction process. So when we actually have a tenant go through approaching eviction, we actually have a lot of processes that do a variety of different things. The main thing we're always trying to do when we're going through an eviction is keep the lines of dialogue open with the tenant. That's paramount because when we run into deferred maintenance, if a tenant's getting evicted, they're not going to call and let us know that the bathroom toilet is leaking and is causing catastrophic damage in the dining room below. We need to have the tenant still communicating with us as best as we can. We are always reaching out to the tenants, even though they're going through the eviction process, saying, hey, reach out to us, talk to us, come up with a plan. Let us know, when you can vacate and we can stop all this nonsense, or we can stop the eviction. That way, if they wanted to move out a week earlier, then we can get them out. That would be an advantage to our property owner. Again, $78 times 7. If we can get them out a month earlier, etc. So we actually have all these processes that are ongoing no matter what the tenant's going through, that's still communicating in a friendly way, an approachable way, saying, hey, we're still approachable. Come to us, we're here for you. It's very rare does a tenant actually come to us. So often when they're getting evicted, they just go to radio silence. They do enjoy the fact that they don't have to pay their rent. And they don't want a conversation to the otherwise. So even though every time Grow Property Management, and we've never had to evict a tenant we've screened to date, but we have actually had plenty of tenants that we've had to evict because owners come to us in distress. They come to us with a tenant in place, placed badly by a real estate agent or by another property management company, or often by the landlord. They just make some mistakes and place the wrong tenants. So we've done plenty of evictions. And again, so I actually do see the numbers because we're actually just not shutting you out, saying we're evicting you, we're not going to talk to you. We're actually still trying to talk to you. And we're just seeing that it's not really an option. So have our metrics here. I would have you actually trying to, when you get into a painful situation with your property, with a repair that is just daunting and it's painful to pay, but it makes sense for you to fix it, like a bad roof, something along the lines of that, or when you're facing an eviction and you now have to stabilize the property, you have to make those decisions. You have to make the constant intellectual right decisions for the property. All right? Just a humble Philadelphia property management company owner doing my very best to answer your rental property investing questions. As always, happy rental property investing.